Okay, all the foils were incinerated. I cooked them, like I said, for an hour at 1,000 degrees. They look like almost paper. They're all really burnt up. But now something I noticed, and I'm hoping one of you more experienced refiners can tell me, some of these caps are completely solid, not even close to being so these were all boiled in hot nitric solution, and these, I mean, they're solid. They're solid. They look like copper or stainless steel. I'm not really sure what they are, but I got a whole bunch of these in this batch that I purchased off of eBay. My guess is these were not actually gold filled, and these were gold plated. So I got a whole bunch of material that's pretty much useless. So unfortunately, that's probably going to affect the yield. There was quite a bit that I picked out of there, but I think majority of this is pretty good. So what we're going to do is we are going to create some aqua regia and see how that turns out. So the first step, I do about 3 parts aqua regia, 1 part nitric acid. I'm gonna do just a little bit, I'm sorry, 3 parts hydrochloric acid, 1 part nitric acid to make the aqua regia. So I'm gonna add about 50 milliliters of hydrochloric acid. And I'm gonna add just a little bit of nitric acid to get it started. About 5 to 10 milliliters worth. I'm gonna put a little plate on it. I'm gonna turn the heat on. And then these little foils should start to dissolve. They're already starting to dissolve. Can you zoom in a little bit? We should start to get some fume production. I'm gonna let this sit for a little bit and I'll be back. We're getting some strong fumes. And remember, I'm gonna add a few drops of sulfuric acid to kind of precipitate any lead that's in the solution. All right, once you cook this down, the aqua regia solution, and you have no more solids, which it looks like we're almost there, you're gonna take a flask and a funnel, pre-wet the filter. We're gonna let this cool down a little bit, and then we're gonna filter this out. And I will come back as soon as it's filtered out. It's gonna take a little bit of time because I just do gravity filtration. So I'll be back in about 20 minutes. I wanna do a quick stannous chloride test to see if we have gold in solution. So I'm gonna dip a little piece of filter paper in the solution. And now we're gonna add a drop of our test. And if it darkens up, then we have gold in solution. Okay, we got a pretty quick reaction, so we definitely have gold in solution. It darkened up quite a bit. And then I'm gonna throw this in my little jar that I have my old filters in, and I'm gonna do a separate video where I'm gonna process all the filters to see what we get out of it. We're still filtering this out, and I'm gonna rinse it with water, clean out the filter, and I'll be back when I'm finished. It's time to drop the gold. I filtered everything out, rinsed it with distilled water. Now we're gonna add some sodium metabisulfite a little bit at a time until we get some white foam on top. And once we get some white foam, that pretty much indicates that everything has dropped out of solution. So we'll start adding this slowly. And remember, the fumes that this puts off, they're pretty strong. Almost there. All right. Actually, let me just do a little bit extra. All right. I'm gonna let this settle for a little bit, and then I will be back to show you what we have. Looks about the same. It's still pretty dark. This is a pretty dirty solution. I'm gonna start decanting that into another beaker. And then remember, this solution we don't throw out. I put it in a large container, and then if you can see, let me lift this up. See all those particles at the bottom of this? That's pure gold that settles out over time. So there's microscopic granules that'll settle out. So I let that accumulate, and then we filter that out too. So let me put my camera in my stand, and I'm gonna show you what's going on. All right. If you get a little bit of gold that goes over, it's okay. Because like I said, it's gonna go in this big flask. It'll settle out, and then in a couple days, we can recover it. So technically, whatever we get, there's probably gonna be 1/10 of a gram more, or even more than that we're just pouring into this other. It got really windy. Just give me a second. All right. You see the gold on the bottom of this? I think I'm gonna, we're getting near the bottom. So I think I'm gonna try to start filtering this in this little flask with a filter paper. And then we're gonna clean this solution up. What I'm gonna do with this is I'm gonna rinse this out several times with distilled water. And then once I rinse it a couple times, I'm gonna put this on the heat, and I'm gonna run some hydrochloric acid in here to clean up this gold powder to get rid of any residual base metals. I'm gonna try to clean it up as good as I can, and maybe we won't need to do a second refining. I'm gonna just try to do just one and see how it comes out. And remember, every time you do this, you lose a little bit of gold. But like I said, I'm not throwing this out. This is all going in that large flask over there. So I'm actually not losing anything. It's just we're not going to get it this session. The good thing is gold is so much denser than water, so it really sits to the bottom pretty quickly. we're gonna add a little bit of hydrochloric acid. And we're gonna put this on the heat, and I'm gonna cook this for a little bit. This is gonna really help dissolve some excess metals that might possibly be in there. So I'm gonna let this cook for a little bit, and then again, I'm gonna drain that off into here, rinse it with distilled water a few times, drain it off, put this in the flask, and then we're left with the pure gold powder, and then we can heat that up into a little ball and see how much we get. All right, now for the very end. This is what we're left with. A little bit of pure gold powder. I'm gonna crumple this up in a ball. I feel like if you really get it into a ball form, it really helps keep it together. Start our heat. Second torch to kind of speed it up. Now I'm not really, let me turn this off. I'm not heating it too fast. I'm kind of doing it low and slow. I don't want the powder to kind of just blow all over the place. So right now I have my map torch on a relatively low output. Because if you just all of a sudden go full blast, you're just going to blow that gold powder and then you're going to lose everything. I'll be back when we start to get a little bit of liquid metal. So this is an old melt dish, and what's happening is this was one of the first melt dishes I ever used. I added way too much boric acid. So right now, the gold's kind of low from the boric acid. You can see it right there. So it's gonna take a little bit of time to free it up, but we'll get it out. It's just a bit of a mess. I think I'm gonna have to try to clean this gold out and maybe get a replacement. Go ahead and time lapse this for you guys. That little bowl was just a complete disaster. I was able to get the gold out, but I'm gonna put it in this new bowl and watch how much better it's gonna melt. That was my first beginner mistake. I added way too much borax to the bowl, thinking that that was a good thing, but it works against you. So I'm gonna try to heat this one up live. Real time. not bad. Not bad at all. It actually looks like we got a decent size piece of gold. I'm gonna pluck it out with these little tweezers. Drop it in some water. You know what? It looks pretty good actually too. It really looks decent. I mean, it's got a little bit of borax powder on it. Zoom in. This looks pretty good. I'm gonna take this inside and get a weight on it, but I'm actually pretty happy with that. By the way, boric acid, not borax. I always call it borax for some reason, but it's boric acid. That's what this had on it. Boric acid is what you use when you're finished. You sprinkle a little bit on the outside of it to get rid of any other impurities. So I estimated 1.37 grams for this batch. So let's see what this little bead gave us. I was pretty darn close. I estimated 1.37. We got 1.41. So basically, as far as these watch bands go, each gram of the band tops gives you 0.0123, and now this is basically giving us 0.0141. So that's a pretty good estimate, about 1/10 of a gram per gram of watch band tops. It seems to be, I mean, considering we did 2 batches and we came up with almost the exact same number, I'm going to say that's pretty accurate. So let me just zoom in on this. Actually, it looks pretty decent. You can see where I grabbed it with the pliers right there, that little dimple. All right, I'll see you on the next video.